Welcome to Better Humanhood, where we build a better world by building better people. We have to live on the planet, and we have to live with other people. We have conversations about making that a wonderful proposition.
Hey there, welcome back to Better Humanhood. Hope you're doing awesome. Come on by the site, sign up for the newsletter. Leave us a rating and review that'll help other people find the show. And now, enough of the business, just listen on in. In the first few years of our lives, we learn a lot. We learn how to crawl, how to walk, how to talk, how to put on pants, how to use a toilet, all the practical stuff we need to just exist in the world. We learn shapes, rudimentary geometry, we learn to read, we learn to do arithmetic. We start learning a bunch of stuff that we'll probably never use, but, I'm all about learning as much as you can about a bunch of different stuff, so that's okay. And then when we're 16, 17, 18 years old, we get cocky. It seems that if you're that age and you know what you want, you can go straight for it. Learn what you need to know to get where you want, pick up some requirements along the way if necessary, and kick ass. Or you're the other kind of cocky. The kind of cocky that thinks you've got everything figured out. Pretty soon you wake up in your early 30s wondering why, and you have no idea why your clothes, music, and job are the same as they were when you were 24. Maybe you picked up a spouse, a couple of kids, a house, and a couple of cars along the way, but basically you didn't grow at all for a decade. Suddenly you realize you don't know anything. Sound familiar? Be honest. We opened last week's show talking about Feck Perfuction. In that book, artist James Victore writes that he had this 15-year plan after high school. He far exceeded his own expectations, and then he stagnated. So another mid-30s burnout. Shepard Fairey went from the guy pasting up Obey Giant posters to the guy who designed one of the most famous presidential campaign posters of our era at about that time in his life. Male comedians tend to start hitting their stride in their mid to late 30s or even later. Women tend to get there faster because there are fewer of them in the business. It's like we have a dead decade between our mid-20s and mid-30s, or even our late 20s and late 30s. Here's something I've learned over the past few years. Quit doing stuff because other people want you to. I'm not saying skip your spouse's office Christmas party or your kid's school play, but your time, energy, and principles are yours. Follow through on your commitments, but don't let others dictate what's important to you. Do you feel like you work too much? Well, your employer doesn't own you. You have a rental agreement with your employer. For most people in the U.S., it's for 40 hours. You don't have to check your email off the clock. You don't have to let your coworkers rent space in your head when you come home. Yeah, you spend 25% of the hours in a week with your colleagues. And if you see them socially 2 to 3 times a week and all you do is talk about work, now you're working a lot longer than 40 hours a week and your employer is still only renting you for the 40 hours you agreed to. Keywords. You agreed to. It happens with your permission. You can withdraw that permission at any time. You can let someone else rent you instead. You can remain unrented. It's up to you. You don't have to have a job. You don't have to live in such a way that you have bills. In No More Mr. Nice Guy, Robert A. Glover reminds us not to be people pleasers. People pleasers do things for others to get something out of it. They're often disappointed. As often, we don't tell the other people what it is we expected out of it. It's not to say don't be selfish, but it's not to say to be selfish, but maybe do be a little. It's not to say you can't have a why outside of yourself. In fact, that's what drives most of us. It's not to say when your spouse asks you to take out the trash that you should refuse. It is to say, however, that if you're going to do something for someone else, don't do it because you expect something in return. Do it because it fills your heart to do something nice. Then move on to the next thing. Don't even expect a thank you. Anything that comes back to you, even as small as the thank you, it's gravy. Let's look at our grander visions. This is where things really start to grind on us if we're pleasing someone else. Blog, the podcast, JKWD, time with my family, they'll bring me joy. Joy, I do them for me. Head on over to joshshear.com. I don't write that for anybody else. Listen to this. It is me. Listen to JKWD. That's very much me and Kelvin. Remember our friend James Victore who had to reinvent himself after far exceeding his expectations and stagnating? He has a contract with a company called Do Books. They couldn't pay him a lot of money, so the contract includes complete creative freedom for the artist. He took the job. He's doing it for himself. Last week we talked about Pan's Labyrinth. Guillermo del Toro gave up his salary and points to do that movie. It was that much of a passion project that he had to do it. He didn't have to have anything in the way of extrinsic rewards while shooting it. If someone tells you you should do something, think about this. If you did it, would you be doing it so you could tell that person, hey, that thing you said I should do, look, I'm doing it? Or would you be doing it so you could look in the mirror, smile for real, and say, hey, remember that thing that person said I should do? Look, I'm doing it. Are you pleasing yourself with it, or are you pleasing somebody else with it? Make sure it's for you. Yeah, I think about the episode of Tim Ferriss's podcast during which he told former Esquire writer Cal Fussman he should start a podcast. Fussman is nervous about the technology. He was a pen and paper guy, typewriter, word processor, Microsoft Word. 25 years writing for a magazine. Well, Cal learned the tech, and it sounds like he's having a blast doing his podcast. He's definitely not doing it for Tim Ferriss, whom he thanks at the end of every episode. He's clearly doing it for himself. If you'd like to make some money from whatever it is, sure, it's possible. But if you do it for the purpose of making money, it probably won't happen. Do it for you. And if you're good at it, the money will follow. Here's a little to-do for you. Take a look at what you did yesterday, last week, last weekend, last month. How many of those things did you do for you? Can you say no to more of those things that you didn't and say yes to yourself? For sure, saying no can be uncomfortable. But I'll tell you, your life depends on it. Be who you are. Be who you will to be. Who you will to be. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Get show notes and more at betterhumanhood.com. Leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And have yourself a wonderful day.